What's up, guys? My name's Brandon, and if you're looking to buy an iPhone in 2025, you have 7 options to choose from, and watching a review video on each individual phone is far too time consuming. So in this video, we're going to break down every iPhone currently sold by Apple. We're going to discuss the good and the bad, which ones you should just outright avoid, how long they'll all last, and of course the best phone to buy in 2025 based on several different categories. Okay, so we're going to start with the design and the build quality, and just taking a look at all these iPhones, they all have a very similar design aside from the iPhone 16e here with the single camera lens. But for the first time in its history, every phone currently sold by Apple has a full screen design with no home button, and all iPhones currently sold by Apple charge via USB-C. Now the iPhone 16e does use an aluminum frame with a glass back. Meanwhile, the iPhone 15, the 15 Plus, the 16, and the 16 Plus all use what Apple calls the color-infused glass back, which is kind of a matte feel. It's very similar to the Pro iPhones right here, the two Pro phones here, the Pro and the Pro Max. But the 16 Pro and 16 Pro Max are a little bit different because they are made with titanium, so they do have a titanium frame, so they're going to be tougher and they're going to be more resistant with drops. Also, it's worth mentioning that the iPhone 16e is the only phone on this table right now that is not compatible with MagSafe chargers and MagSafe accessories, which that might be, I just want to get that out of the way early on because that might be a deal breaker for some people if you have a lot of MagSafe accessories. Now the iPhone 16e can charge wirelessly via Qi chargers, but it's not MagSafe and it's limited to just 7.5 watts compared to the 15 watts of charging speeds for all of the 15s and of course all the other 16s as well. Now the iPhone 15 and 15 Plus both have the old school ringer switch, so you can flip this to turn it into mute mode. Meanwhile, the entire iPhone 16 series has the customizable action button, so it's no longer a switch, it's just a button that you can press to either mute or you can change it to be something custom. All you have to do is go into your settings, go to action button, and from here you can change what that action button does. So if you don't want it to be silent mode, you can change it to any of these other options, which is really cool. It's just a much better customization experience, and I just find it much more useful than the solo task of the mute switch in the past. And I personally use the action button multiple times a day. Like every single night I use it for the flashlight, so I find the action button to be very handy. That is also on the iPhone 16e, by the way. The budget iPhone does have that action button as well. Now also on the iPhone 16, 16 Plus, and the 16 Pro and Pro Max, we have the camera control button down here on the bottom right side. And this is something that originally got a lot of flack, a lot of pushback on this, but this is really useful for quickly launching the camera application or really any application that you have mapped to that button. This is such an overhated feature in my opinion, and I just think it's nice to have. Like, you don't have to use it. A lot of people hated on it, but it's not like you have to use it. You can turn it off, but it is nice to have there if you are somebody who likes being able to control your camera, because it is touch sensitive as well. You can kind of zoom and change different things on there as well. It's really handy once you actually get the hang of it. Now, all of these guys are going to be IP68 water and dust resistant, so if you do jump into a pool with any of these phones, including the iPhone 16e, you will be just fine. Now, as far as the front glass on these iPhones, they are all made by Corning, and it is marketed by Apple as the ceramic shield. So Apple claims that ceramic shield is tougher than any other smartphone glass on the market, and it offers 4 times better drop protection than previous iPhones. Now, the iPhone 16 and 16 Pros do have the latest generation of this, ceramic shield. So the iPhone 16 E and the iPhone 15, so these 3 right here, do all have the original ceramic shield. So I've not really noticed a major difference, and if you watch the durability test, there's not a big difference, but it is worth mentioning that technically the iPhone 16 and 16 Plus and the 16 Pros are going to be a little bit tougher as far as that front glass goes. But that is just for the front glass. So if you do drop your phone and it cracks that back glass and you have to get that replaced, that will be quite expensive on any of these iPhones, and that's why today's sponsor, Torras, Torras has you covered with some awesome cases for the iPhone 16 series. So Torras is known as the original creator of the O-Stand case, but now they're getting stylish with these trendy new colors for the O-Stand Air and the O-Stand Fitness cases. The O Air case is the flagship model that will surprise you when you hear what it's packing, because it not only looks good and high-end aesthetically, but it's also highly durable. So it has these kind of grip strips along the sides, and it also has air-injected bumpers at the top and the bottom for extreme drop protection. Yes, airbags. Most cases with airbags look big and bulky, but not this one. So yeah, you'd never really know from the outside that it's so protective, since it also has these precise buttons, a conductive button for the camera control, and also that ring on the back, all in this slim profile. Now on the other hand, the O Fitness case is the most popular one, since it strikes that perfect balance between durability and practicality, in the sense that it's slimmer and also has a more refined feel in the hand, thanks to that dot matrix design that you see goes all the way around the case. And while it does not have the external airbag bumpers like on the Air, it does have internal airbag lining and also raised camera edges for solid drop protection. But of course, the star of the show is that iconic stand on the back that rotates 360 degrees. You can prop up your phone in various ways or just hold on to it when you're out and about. And when it's not in use, it folds flush with the case and it does not interfere with MagSafe charging. It actually sticks better when you're using MagSafe charging. So if you want to protect your iPhone in style, you need one of these new cases from Torras. And to do that, check my link down in the description below for the best deal for your new iPhone 16 case. Okay, so the 2025 iPhones are weird because we have the biggest display size discrepancy that I think we've ever had in any iPhone lineup in the past. We have 4 different display sizes here. So we have the iPhone 15, the iPhone 16, and the iPhone 16e. These 3 right here have a 6.1 inch display. The 16 Pro has a 6.3 inch display. The iPhone 15 Plus and 16 Plus have a 6.7 inch display, and the iPhone 16 Pro Max has a 6.9 inch display. Now of the bunch, the iPhone 16e is the lightest, so it comes in at 167 grams. The iPhone 16 is 170 grams. The iPhone 15 is 171 grams. The 16 Plus and the 16 Pro are both 199 grams. The 15 Plus is 201 grams, and the iPhone 16 Pro Max is 227 grams. And the 16e is also the shortest and the skinniest of the bunch, but if you really compare the 3 biggest phones here, so the 15 Plus, the 16 Plus, and the 16 Pro Max, the 16 Pro Max is going to be taller, thicker, and heavier than any of these 3. So the 15 Plus is just a tad wider and lighter than the 16 Pro Max. And by the way, if you're thinking that the weight numbers are like a bit off, if you think the 16 Pro Max is like super heavy because it's the heaviest of the bunch, I want you to realize that it's a tiny bit heavier than the 15 Pro Max, but aside from that model, aside from comparing it to that model, it's basically the lightest Pro Max phone since the iPhone 12 Pro Max from 5 years ago. And this is not just a spec sheet lighter, like it's only like 2 grams lighter. This is something you'll actually be able to tell, in real life. So if you do have an older Pro Max phone, upgrading to a 16 Pro Max will be a noticeable difference in the hand and the pocket. Now, as for the feel in the hands, I do prefer the iPhone 15s and the iPhone 16s and the iPhone 16 Pros. The only one I think does not feel the best in the hand is the iPhone 16e because it doesn't have that matte back. Like it does have a similar feel, but it's not quite as smooth as the other iPhones in the lineup. But of course, the best feel in the hands in terms of a premium feeling, that's going to come from the Pros. Like that titanium frame not only looks more premium, but it also feels more premium in the hand. So if you're looking for that ultimate premium device, the Pro and Pro Max are going to be the ones for you because they definitely feel it. Now, I want to ask you guys a question and see if you can notice this without me saying anything. Taking a look at all these iPhones right here on the desk, which one looks different? There's only one model iPhone on the desk right now that does not look like the others. I'll give you 2 seconds. It's the iPhone 16e. It still has a notch, whereas every other iPhone, including the base model iPhone 15, does have the dynamic island. It has that little pill shape right there instead of the notch cutout. And me personally, I think the dynamic island is one of the best iOS features, period. Like the way it's able to give me notifications and keep me updated in real time with like F1 races and sports and my Uber Eats order, my flights with Flighty. Like there's so many use cases for the dynamic island that alone iPhone makes the iPhone 16e a deal breaker. And that might sound dramatic. Maybe it is. Maybe I am dramatic, but it's really that important to me because I use it every single day. But aside from the dynamic island, there's also a pretty big difference between all of these iPhones when it comes to the display itself, because the 15, the 15 Plus, the 16 Plus, and the 16e all have the Super Retina XDR OLED display, and they all have a similar resolution with a 460 ppi and a 2 million to 1 contrast ratio. Now the iPhone 15, 15 Plus, the iPhone 16, and the iPhone 16 Plus all have 1000 nits of peak brightness, 1600 nits while watching HDR, and 2000 nits while outside with auto brightness on. Oh, and that does also include the Pros, by the way. The Pro and Pro Max get the same peak brightness as the base model iPhone 16 and 16 Plus, which is awesome. Meanwhile, the iPhone 16e only gets up to 800 nits of peak brightness, and that goes up to 1200 when watching HDR content. But that's not it, because there's another big difference with the displays, and that is the refresh rate. So the 16 Pro and Pro Max are going to be the only iPhones currently sold by Apple that get up to 120 Hertz for that refresh rate. All the others are limited to 60 Hertz. And we've had this debate many times, but I'll say it again. It is very noticeable on the iPhone to go from 60 Hertz to 120 Hertz, or especially if you downgrade from 120 Hertz down to 60 Hertz, it's a noticeable difference when scrolling, and everything just feels smoother on the ProMotion 120 Hertz displays that you get with the Pros. And that ProMotion display also allows for the always on display, which can show you the time, notifications, and widgets when your device is locked. So this does take the phone down to 1 Hertz when your phone is locked, so it doesn't drain battery. And of course you can turn this off if you would like to, but it is a really nice and handy feature to at least have the option of enabling. Okay, so now we're gonna get a bit controversial, because I know some people are gonna disagree with me here, but just hear me out. This is another big difference between the iPhone 15 and 15 Plus and all the other iPhones sold by Apple, and that is Apple Intelligence. So right now, Apple Intelligence gives you the new Siri, it gives you AI writing tools, Genmoji, cleanup in photos, priority notifications, and there's a lot more coming. And here's the thing you need to realize. Every year when a new software update comes out, a lot of the new features are going to be based around Apple Intelligence. So that alone for me, if I'm looking to have my device for at least 2 to 3 years, you can expect to see a lot of Apple Intelligence features coming over those next 2 to 3 years. So if you're looking to buy an iPhone and there's like $100 difference between like the 15 and the 16, why would you not just spend the extra $100 to make sure you get all the new features in the future? Even if you don't like Apple Intelligence right now, just hear me out. If you're watching WWDC, just put yourself in this situation and you see all these new features being announced and you're like, oh, well, this doesn't apply to me. That looks cool, but I'll never be able to test it because, I just got a 15. I didn't get a 16. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to be missing out on all the future features just because you don't have an Apple Intelligence device because you didn't want to spend $100. Like, I get it. Some people may not have an extra $100, but just work for a little bit longer. $100 is really nothing when you're planning on keeping your iPhone for several years. So, that's kind of a spoiler about which iPhone I'm going to recommend. I just really cannot recommend the iPhone 15 or 15 Plus strictly because they're never going to have Apple Intelligence support. And that means you're going to miss out on a lot of future software-based features. Even if you don't like Apple Intelligence now, like I said, in the future, it might be, something that you might like. So I don't like saying to buy something on the promise of future software features, but there's features there right now on the iPhone 16 that you can access. Whether you think they're useful or not, that's up to you, but I do think it is something to consider at least. Now, as far as the speaker quality, if you're watching a lot of videos on your iPhone, the Pro and Pro Max are going to get the loudest, but it's not really a big difference from the other one. So I'll let you guys be the judge. Here's a little speaker test of all these iPhones. Okay, so let's talk about the cameras on these iPhones. So the iPhone 15 and 15 Plus both have a dual 12 megapixel camera system. So they have the main and the ultra wide lens. They also have deep fusion, smart HDR5, portrait mode, and night mode. They can also shoot video up to 4K 60 in HDR. They have cinematic mode, and they do also have action mode. And they also have the next generation portraits with focus and depth control, which is where you can take a photo, even if you're not in portrait mode, and you can kind of make it into portrait mode after the fact. Now the iPhone 16 and 16 Plus, you can see we have a difference in the, layout here of the cameras. They're now vertical. That right there allows for spatial photos and spatial videos, but that is an advanced dual camera system. So it's a 48 megapixel fusion camera and a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera, and that gives us deep fusion, smart HDR5, next gen portraits, macro mode, and most importantly to me, the latest generation photographic styles, which is really useful. Now, as far as video goes, these do have wind noise reduction. They have audio mix, which is a cool AI feature, spatial video recording, and macro video recording as well. Then the iPhone 16e has a 2-in-1 camera system. So it's a 48 megapixel fusion camera with OIS, and it does get you 1x and 2x optical zoom. And you can also digital zoom up to 10x. It also has smart HDR5 like the rest, but it is missing the new photographic styles that the other iPhone 16 models have. And then for video, it can shoot 4K 60, but it cannot do macro or spatial photos or videos. It's also missing cinematic mode, action mode, and the sensor shift OIS. It just has regular OIS for photos and videos. And then we have the Mac Daddies here, the iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max, which have a Pro camera system. So they have a 48 megapixel fusion camera, a 48 megapixel ultra wide camera, and a 12 megapixel telephoto camera lens. They also have the second generation sensor shift OIS, so they are going to be more stable than the other phones when recording video especially. They could also digital zoom up to 25x. There's also night mode portraits, 48 megapixel macro photography with that ultra wide lens, and also Pro RAW. And then as far as video goes, you do have regular or ProRes video up to 4K 120 FPS. So you can shoot up to 120 FPS on the 16 Pros. You cannot do that on any of the others. You could also record externally doing that. And you also have the ability to shoot log, macro video recording, and also slow-mo and time-lapse. Oh, and the microphones are also better when you're recording on the Pro and Pro Max because they do have that studio quality 4-mic array with audio mix, which has the studio option on the Pros, along with wind noise reduction like on the regular 16 and 16 Plus. So if you care the most about the camera quality, you're going to want to go with the Pro or the Pro Max. Even the regular 16 or 16 Plus are going to be excellent as well. It's just if you want access to those Pro modes like ProRes and Pro RAW for photos, you'll want to go with the Pros. If you don't even know what any of that is, you'll probably be just fine with the 16 or the 16 Plus. But the camera quality is better. It's noticeably better than the iPhone 15 and 15 Plus. Now the camera on the iPhone 16e is not terrible by any means. It's just bare bones. Like you don't get a lot of the cool software-based features, and you're really limited by that single camera lens. Even if it is a 2-in-1, you're still going to be limited with that single lens. Like I think that honestly the Pros are overkill for 90+% of people, and the iPhone 16s are just fine, but at least it's nice to have those Pro options on the Pro phones if you can afford it and if you really care about the quality of your photos and videos, especially if you post that online. Okay, so always one of the top 3 reasons that somebody chooses an iPhone over another is going to be for the battery life. So we need to talk about the battery life on all of these iPhones currently sold by Apple. So the iPhone 15 gets video streaming playback. I'm going to use video streaming playback as the metric here because I think that's what the majority of people would do for a long period of time, instead of just browsing the web for that long. Anyways, video streaming on the iPhone 15 will be 16 hours. The iPhone 16 comes in next at 18 hours. Then the iPhone 15 Plus at 20 hours. 16e gets 21 hours. The 16 Pro gets 22 hours. The 16 Plus gets 24 hours, and the 16 Pro Max gets 29 hours of video streaming playback. Now, as far as audio playback on the iPhone 16 Pro Max, that gets 105 hours compared to 100 hours on the 15 and the 16 Plus, and then you get 80 hours on the iPhone 15, 85 hours on the 16 Pro, and 90 hours on the iPhone 16e. And unlike last year in 2024, this year, Apple's ratings for the battery is actually in line with my experience. So last year, the Plus model got better battery life than the Pro Max. It was completely different than 2025, but this year it's exactly in line with Apple's ratings, which is very interesting. I believe the previous year it was off as well, but I've noticed that the 16 Pro Max always gets better battery life than the 15 Plus or the 16 Plus. And again, that's not how it was last year, at least not so consistently and such a big difference in battery life. So the 16 Pro Max is the king of battery life here in 2025. However, I do have to say that the iPhone 16e has been constantly outperforming my iPhone 16 Pro in terms of battery life. So as you guys know, I was using the 16 Pro for the majority of 2024 and into 2025. And once the 16e came out, I switched over to that. And it may be because it's new, but the 16e has still to this day been getting better battery life than the 16 Pro for me, just doing everyday tasks. But if you're trying to choose between the regular 15, the regular 16, and the 16e, so these three right here, I would say that the 16e does last the longest and it is noticeable, but between the 15 and the 16, the difference is very negligible. Like I didn't notice a 2-hour difference in battery life like Apple rates it. These perform very similar in terms of battery life. Okay, so I don't really like talking about the performance of these latest and greatest iPhones because it's really not going to be a big difference. Like you can watch all the speed tests on YouTube. In real life, it's really not going to be that big of a difference. Even from the base 15 to the 16 Pro Max, it's not going to be a big difference in performance. But nonetheless, let's talk about it. So the 15 and the 15 Plus have the A16 Bionic chip with a 6-core CPU, 5-core GPU, and 16-core neural engine. They also have 6 gigs of RAM. Meanwhile, the iPhone 16, the 16 Plus, and the 16e all have the A18 chip, a 6-core CPU, 5-core GPU, whereas the 16e actually has a 4-core GPU, also a 16-core neural engine, and 8 gigabytes of RAM. And then the iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max have the A18 Pro chip, a 6-core CPU, 6-core GPU, 16-core neural engine, and 8 gigs of RAM. So it does have that additional GPU core over the base 16 and 16 Plus. And like I said, you're not really going to see a big difference. However, I do have to say that you will see a small but noticeable advantage to the iPhone 16, 16 Plus, and 16e because of the 2 generations newer A18 chip, and especially the extra 2 gigs of RAM. You will notice that, but to be honest, it's not worth paying more just for the performance alone. Unless you do a lot of gaming, then obviously the 16 series is going to be better with the more RAM, the more GPU cores, especially the Pro and Pro Max. But unless you're like a professional gamer, I don't really see how that's worth the extra money just for that alone. And by the way, on the subject of gaming, the iPhone 16 series, so all the iPhone 16s are going to be better for gaming because of the hardware accelerated ray tracing, which allows for more accurate representation of light in games with up to 5 times higher frame rates than software-based ray tracing that you find on the 15 and 15 Plus. So again, if you're into gaming, if you game at all, you are going to see a nice improvement here on the iPhone 16 series. But again, in day-to-day usage, you're not going to see a big difference except for with the RAM and keeping applications open longer in the background. That is a nice advantage, but just raw performance is going to be very similar across the board. So let's talk connectivity, cellular, and wireless, because all these phones do have 5G, but they are not all treated equally. And that's because the iPhone 16e only has sub-6 5G, whereas all the others have millimeter wave, aka the much faster 5G. And I didn't think I'd actually notice this until I started using the iPhone 16e. Now, granted, I only noticed the difference when I was in the city around 5G towers and, where the internet was really fast, but it wasn't for voice quality or anything like that. It was only for downloading applications. And when I'm on Twitter and things like that, things just loaded faster with millimeter wave, but there was no real difference in overall cell signal, like talking on the phone and sending texts and things like that. So, that is something to note, but I don't think it's going to make a huge difference unless you are in the city all the time. Now, the iPhone 15, 15 Plus, and the 16e also have Bluetooth 5.3 and Wi-Fi 6, while the iPhone 16, 16 Plus, and the 16 Pros all have Wi-Fi 7 instead of Wi-Fi 6. Also, all phones except for the iPhone 16e have Apple's second generation ultra wideband chip, which means improved speeds and range for Find My, spatial awareness, and most importantly, the awesome precision finding feature to find your friends as if they were an AirTag. Also, the iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max are the only ones here with Thread built in, along with the Precision dual frequency GPS, which was first introduced with the 14 Pros, but still only in the Pro models. This basically just means that it can receive signals from 2 different frequencies for more accurate and reliable location tracking, especially in big cities. And me personally, I have noticed a difference with this. I said this back with the 14s, but you do notice a difference with that dual frequency GPS. It's a small thing, but it is worth mentioning. And when it comes to physical connectivity, all these iPhones do have USB-C. However, the iPhone 16 Pros are going to be faster because they have those USB 3 transfer speeds. Okay, we're wrapping up here. Let's talk about the pricing and which one you should buy. So the iPhone 15 is going to be $699, and that starts from 128 gigs and goes up to 512 gigs. The iPhone 15 Plus is $799. That goes from 128 to 512. The iPhone 16 and 16 Plus are $799 and $899 respectively, and they go from 128 to 512 gigs as well. iPhone 16e is $599. That also goes from 128 to 512. And then the 16 Pro and Pro Max are $999 and $1199 respectively. Also, the iPhone 16 Pro Max starts at 256 gigs of storage compared to the 16 Pro, which starts at 128. So yes, the iPhone 16e is the cheapest and arguably the best value iPhone, but it also comes with several drawbacks that makes the iPhone 16 worth the extra $200 in my opinion, especially for things like MagSafe support. Like that seems like something small, but trust me, the MagSafe accessories and just being able to charge at the full 15 watts does make a pretty big difference. So I don't know, unless you're on a strict budget, I find it hard to recommend the 16e over the iPhone 16, even though the 16 is a bit more expensive. And like I said earlier, but I just have to mention it again, I really cannot recommend the iPhone 15 or the iPhone 15 Plus here in 2025, strictly because they do not have Apple Intelligence support. And I know that might be a hot take, but me personally, I'm somebody who gets FOMO if I don't get all the new software update features. Like even with, cars or whatever, like I want the latest and greatest features. I don't want to feel left out when everybody else is getting these cool new features. So even if you don't like Apple Intelligence now, we know for a fact that a lot of features are going to be coming over the next couple of years. It's not really a hope or a promise. We know for a fact that they are coming, and we have some right now. So for me, that just rules out the iPhone 15 and 15 Plus, especially since it's only like $100 difference to just go up to the iPhone 16. It's really a no-brainer in my opinion. I think this is the first year in a long time where it really makes no sense to go to the older iPhones to try to save money. I think you have to go for the one of the iPhone 16 series, unless you're going to go to a used or refurbished iPhone like a 15 Pro or Pro Max, or even something older. But it's not just the Apple Intelligence support. You're also getting a 2 generations newer chip. So you go from A16 to A18. That may play a major role in how long these phones will last. So in theory, the iPhone 16 might actually last 2 years longer than the iPhone 15, based on just history. So that's a big reason also to just spend $100. You have the better camera system, arguably the better colors. I think the colors are better. You get the upgraded photographic styles as well. And you have better battery life on the iPhone 16s. So I just think it really makes no sense to buy a 15 or 15 Plus, in my opinion, here in 2025, especially when it's only a $100 difference to go up to the 16. Okay, so if you're still confused, let me help you break it down. So if you care the most about battery life, I would say get the 16 Pro Max or the iPhone 16 Plus if you want to save money and you don't need the 120 Hz refresh rates or the pro camera features. Now, if you care about the camera quality the most, but you care about battery life as a close second, I would say get the 16 Pro or the 16 Pro Max, depending on your size preference. They will be worth that extra money for you. Now, if you're somebody who's on a really tight budget, or you're maybe buying an iPhone as a gift for somebody, I would say the iPhone 16e is perfect for that, especially if you're buying it for somebody who doesn't really care about having the latest and greatest and doesn't really care about these super intricate details of the iPhone. Now, if you want the best mix of new features and cost, but don't necessarily care about having the latest, niche feature and the best camera quality, I would also say the iPhone 16e is great for you. But if you like a bigger display, I think the iPhone 16 Plus actually is a better buy than the iPhone 16e. Even though there is a couple $100 of a price difference, I think that the 16e is still missing out on a lot of key features. So it's really going to come down to what do you prioritize with your iPhone experience. And then if you want the best overall bang for your buck iPhone that Apple sells sales right now, I think it has to be the base model iPhone 16. I think this is the iPhone to get for most people here in 2025. The base iPhone 16 is just such a great value. I mean, you have the dynamic island, you have faster 5G speeds, you have the best color options in my opinion, especially this ultramarine right here, and also the teal. You have a better camera system than the 16e or the iPhone 15. You have the camera control button and the new photographic styles system. I just think the iPhone 16 is the best bang for your buck you can get right now. So yes, I do think the iPhone 16 is the best bang for your buck iPhone in 2025. However, if you can stretch your budget a little bit more, I would say that the iPhone 16 Pro or Pro Max, depending on your size preference, I think they are worth the extra money if you care about those pro camera features, and also if you want the best battery life possible in an iPhone, along with the most premium feeling iPhone possible. The Pro and Pro Max are great for that as well. Obviously the top choice if there was no budget involved, but budget considered, iPhone 16 all the way. And then lastly, I do also want to mention older iPhones. So if you're looking to buy maybe a used or a refurbished iPhones, which ones should you be looking at and which ones should you completely avoid? So if it were me right now and I couldn't quite afford the iPhone 16, or maybe I wanted a Pro phone, but I didn't want to spend the Pro money, I would be looking at the iPhone 15 Pro and the iPhone 15 Pro Max. You can find these on eBay right now in great condition for about $600. These have Apple Intelligence support, unlike the base 15 and 15 Plus, and they also have the amazing triple camera setup. I think the 15 Pro and Pro Max are an excellent deal right now on that used market. However, I would say that if you have a lower budget of around $500, I'd be looking at an iPhone 14 Pro Max with a battery health above 85%. So you can find these on eBay right now. Like I said, around $500. That is a steal for the iPhone 14 Pro Max in my opinion. But if you don't even have that much of a budget, if you have a really constrained budget of around $300, look no further than the iPhone 13. Go on Amazon. You can find these refurbished on Amazon. You could also find them used on eBay for around $300. That is a lot of phone for $300 or less. So take a look at the iPhone 13 if you're really on a tight budget and you don't want to spend a lot on an iPhone. Just make sure you do a thorough check of the seller before you purchase that iPhone. So I hope this video helped you figure out which iPhone you should be buying here in 2025. If it helped you out, let me know with a comment down below. And if you have any questions, maybe you're wondering if you should upgrade from like an iPhone 13 to an iPhone 16 Plus or something random like that, leave your comments down below and I will do my best to get back to you and say if I think it's worth upgrading from X phone to X phone. So leave a comment down below. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up and I'll see you guys very soon.